Well, welcome in, everybody. We wake up this morning with a slight hint of fall in the air, so what better time to talk with new head coach and general manager of the ECHL Maine Mariners, Mr. Rich Kowalsky. Coach, welcome back to Maine.
Thank you. Very excited. Been busy, but busy on the hockey side and busy doing the reception has been good from the organization, from players, and then obviously people like yourself in the media that support the team have been great. Been doing a lot of these, which is obviously helps and shows the passion and interest in the team there in Portland.
A very passionate fan base, a very loud fan base. Portland's small, we know that, but a very, very loud fan base. So, well, we're so excited to have you on. So excited that you're back in Maine. Talking about this decision, what was it about the Maine Mariners, Dexter Payne, and the organization that guided your decision to come back here?
Well, there was a couple things. I interviewed quite a bit this summer for a couple American League head jobs, and was kind of the bridesmaid to those a couple of those, and then once all the head jobs were gone, started looking at assistant positions, and then actually got contacted by another East Coast League team just to see if I would be interested in kind of coming back to the ECHL in a head position, and it just kind of, at the time, I was still looking at some assistant jobs in the American League, and I had talked to the Providence people, Evan Gold, and Ryan Mouginel, and Trent Whitfield there. And they had brought up Maine, and then I had just kind of said that, I want to start researching this. It's it allows me to be a head coach, and then so that's how it kind of started, and we went through a bit of a meet and greet process. And the more I talked to Dexter Payne, just the better I felt about the opportunity. The general manager position added on that tag was certainly another reason. I've been coaching 20 years, and I think at some point I would like to maybe, move over into management, and this gives me an opportunity to kind of get the best of both worlds. And then the third thing for it, really, for me, was familiar with the city, played there, thoroughly enjoyed my time there, and excited to get back. So those really those three things: the opportunity to be head coach, GM, and have a say and put a stamp on my own team, the quality of ownership, and the city are really the three big ones for me.
That's awesome. And if you have a chance, anybody to talk to Dexter, you can feel that passion and enthusiasm he has for the city of Portland and for the Maine Mariners. So I'm not surprised that you felt that as well.
Yeah, for sure. That was evident from day one and got stronger each time we talked. So there's no question he's all in on this, and is going to give us the support and resources. And it's not just about the team. He loves the fans. He's passionate about the city. It's great. So there's no question. He had a big that attitude and that I guess just his overall demeanor and for this is something that was really appealed to me.
That's awesome. Before we look ahead, I do want to look back a little bit. As you referenced, you've been coaching for a long time. Spent 3 seasons with the New Jersey Devils in the NHL, as an assistant. Can you highlight that experience for us and speak to maybe some of your takeaways from those 3 years?
Well, for me, it was a dream come true, I guess. I had been coaching in the American League for, I think, 8 years at that point, and had not been too aggressive in pursuing an NHL job. And then when Ray Shero and Tom Fitzgerald came over as a management team, there was a big difference in philosophy and as far as how the American League and NHL coaches interacted. I knew John Hynes had coached 6 years against them in the American League. So, it wasn't like I was, the NHL coach was Jacques Lemaire, who I've become good friends with now, but there was a lot more sense of comfortability there, I think, between the American League and the NHL relationship when those guys took over. And then the assistant coach was Alain Nasreddine, who I actually played with in Portland for about 10, 15 games. So knowing those guys and just the way they ran things and how much we were involved as an American League staff, when the job came open, I think they were looking at me as a candidate, but I made it real clear that I was interested in moving up. And for me, moving into the NHL, surrounded by those guys that I guess, weren't above me. I was coaching against them 3-4 years ago, and it was probably a little less intimidating than it maybe would have been if I had got a job with an established NHL coach. And Hynes was great, and so were Ray and Tom in that transition. And for me, just the one thing I take away, and I tell the players this, like, there's a reason those guys are the best players in the world. Like, every day, everything they do is at 100% focus, at 100% execution, at 100% compete. It's just because it's obviously there's only so many jobs, and the professionalism of the athlete, and then obviously the treatment and the lifestyle that we all lead, traveling, private charters and staying in Ritz-Carltons and Four Seasons, and you're in LA and Dallas and all over the country. It was a great experience for me. Obviously we did not have a lot of success on the ice. We had a lot of success in the lottery, yes. which worked out and certainly has them headed in the right direction right now. But I think just the level of professionalism. I had Taylor Hall at Kyle Palmieri. I had Blake Coleman. There's a handful of guys that had played for me in the minors, Coleman being one. So it was good to kind of follow them up there eventually, and I was happy for them. They were happy for me. And then obviously to get coach guys, some of those veterans I mentioned, but then also Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, PK Subban. So it was. I was very fortunate. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Obviously, multiple things, went south in the fact that Ray got fired and then John got fired and then COVID hit, all in a matter of about 2 months. And the rest is kind of history. But keep in touch with John and Naz and obviously Tom Fitzgerald as well. And Ray, obviously sad news about him over this last year. Great hockey man, and obviously a history in the game with his dad. But for me, it was just a great experience. Would certainly love to get back there. But right now I'm focused at the task at hand here.
Well, and that's kind of a follow-up question I had for you. You mentioned John Hynes, of course, in that 2019-2020 season. He gets fired 26 games in. And, as an assistant coach in a year that was just so challenging, how do you navigate, those sort of changes, I guess, in the middle of a season? And how do you keep guys motivated?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It was so I had been with New Jersey and in Albany all those years, and they had Pete DeBoer got fired, and trying to think, I felt like there was maybe one or two more guys that get low. Pete got let go around Christmas, but we weren't connected to it, right? We were in the American League. We went about our business. That was a unique experience in the sense that the team was struggling. You clearly knew John was frustrated. We were frustrated as a team, but obviously the head coach takes the brunt of that. And I remember we went into Buffalo that night, and I remember John seemed off. He seemed off in the morning. He seemed off during game. I don't know if he knew it was coming, or I don't know, he had just reached a frustration level. But I'll never forget that game. it was the first or second shot. Louis Domingue was in net, and he made a blocker save, and he kind of lost it, put his hand in the air, and the puck went straight up and down his back and in. And I just went, I think we lost 7-2. And it was the quietest dressing room, the quietest coach's room, the quietest plane ride home. And we played Vegas at home the next day. I remember getting a call at I don't even know. I didn't get a call. I came to the rink around 3, and Tom Fitzgerald had come in and said, we're doing a press conference right now. John Hynes got let go. Elaine Nazardine's the coach. And there was myself and Mike Greer and Rolly Melanson. And we were like, what? So everything happened so quick. Naz came, Elaine come running in. He's like, I'm just going to have a quick talk with them. Don't think, just play and get through this. And I believe we lost that game in overtime, or maybe won in overtime. But like most teams do, when there's changes like that, the team responded. I think the group, there were some young players that Hynes had, in his crosshairs, and they struggled a little bit, prior to all this happening. And I think that might have been a reason for the decision. And, Naz had never been a head coach. I had obviously head coach experience. And we just talked about, okay, we got to let these young kids play. Like, just let them go out, let them make mistakes, focus on their strengths. And it's like I said, anytime there's a change, it usually happens. And John Hynes obviously was hired right again. He's a great coach, but I think that had run its course. And we actually had a pretty good run there until COVID shut us down. So, crazy experience for sure. Never want to see anybody go through, getting let go. It's not fun. It's part of the business. I know everybody says this, but it's a tough situation. I know Pete DeBoer well this year, know him well from the time in Jersey. I think he's a great coach, well respected, obviously bouncing around, and sometimes they move on just for the sake of didn't get it done. I mean, that was a pretty good team, and I get it. They got to get over the hump. I know Rob. I grew up with Rob Blake, and I text him. He's like, got to get past the first round. It's that simple. So.
Yeah, well, I have opinions on Pete DeBoer myself. If anybody watched my Central Division preview, I had a little Pete DeBoer rant. Can't believe he got fired. I think it was the worst decision that Dallas could make. And I'll just stop for a second. You are a head coach. Us media people, we love it when you're honest, when you're upfront and transparent, and we get so many canned answers and boring answers. And Pete DeBoer, there he is. He's emotional, he's raw, and he's honest. Yeah. And I don't have any problem with what he said about Jake Ottinger. It wasn't his fault they lost the series, but Jakey didn't play good. No. And so you fire the guy because he's being honest. I know there's probably more nuance to it, but I just talking about DeBoer, it gets me riled up a little bit because I just think he got
and you're right, and it's like I said, and I felt bad for him, and the heat of the moment with the whole when he pulled him there. I mean, you get fired up as a coach, and there's a lot going on. I don't know. I just know him personally from working with him, and has done a great job everywhere he's been. He's again just can't get over the hump, but is the alternative always the right answer, right?
100%. And I think DeBoer's back in the league before U.S. Thanksgiving. That's my prediction. Yeah. So we'll see. Talking about last year, of course, you were in Bridgeport last year with the Islanders. A tough season on the ice for the club. When you go through a season like that, how do you continue motivating players and coaches and yourself when it's such a challenging season?
No, it's a great question. And to kind of just take you back, I'd been there 4 years. The first year I came in as an associate coach, and there was some good pieces there, some good veterans. We had Andreoff and Chris Terry and Austin Zarnik, Corey Schneider in net, and some guys that had been there and played under Brent Thompson. That were good, hard-working guys, and we ended up getting the playoffs. We beat Providence in the first round, and then we lost to a pretty good Charlotte team in the second round. Next year, similar team. We get off to a really good start. I think we lost Zarnik, but we had Ishikov, a young prospect from Russia, come over. So the skill level was still decent. Corey Snyder was starting to run out of gas, and ideally that's probably why we didn't get in that year. Then Brent moves on to Anaheim. I get the head job. We're concerned about our goaltending. We don't re-sign Chris Terry, and Andreoff goes to the KHL literally the day I signed. And I think we lost about, I want to say they were about 140 points between the two of them. We didn't replace it. Now we had a character group. Goaltending was not where it needed to be. But from a coaching standpoint, it was a real good group. They responded. We made adjustments. They worked hard. They cared about each other. I think we were the highest in the American League, 35 or 36 one-goal games we were in that year. So we just couldn't get a save when we needed it. And on the other side of it, we couldn't get that insurance goal, or we couldn't get that extra goal. So fast forward to coming into this year, we as a coaching staff, kind of express what we feel maybe needs to change. We knew goaltending was going to be an issue. They signed Hallberg. He plays, I think, 8 games. Islanders get injuries, and we never see him again. The young guys can't carry the weight. We don't replace the scoring. And we knew the D was going to be, we lost our captain. So a lot of things, it was just kind of a slow word as far as the team build was tough as a coach to not be able to have any impact over that. And then combine the injuries we had and the injuries we had. Ishikov last my leading scorer from the year before. So I lost in 2 years as a head coach. I lost my 4 leading scorers over the course of two years. So anyways, to get to your point, this year in particular was real tough on everybody. It was tough coming to the rink. It was not fun. We tried to look at making changes. We couldn't. And at the end of the day, to your point, and this is something I take from a little bit from Jersey and John Hynes. You come out of the coach's room, you gotta provide energy. You gotta look motivated. And I think that, and I just told my coaches, my assistant coach, we just gotta keep coaching. We just got to keep coaching, developing these guys, and find new ways to kind of, which every coach is doing it. You're saying the same thing pretty much all year. You're just trying to say it in a different way. And when things are that tough, it can certainly wear on you certainly as a head coach. I tell people all the time, it took years off my life, but it was frustrating. But you learn how to, we got creative with practices just to get these guys to think out of the box. Probably taught offense the last 2 years more than I ever have. I've always been a, defensive structured guy. Give yourself a chance to win. Now you're getting creative with how to help these guys play offensively and think outside the box. And then just, again, still talking to your players and showing them video and on to the next game. But it got tough pretty much from February on. It was, and again, I'm not putting this all on the goaltending, but we had some young goaltenders that probably were in situations they shouldn't have been. And anybody that's played any sport, especially hockey, if you're not comfortable with who's in the pipes, and then, you get out, you score early, you're playing well, and then a weak one goes in, you can say all you want as a coach. There's just that feeling on the bench that when's the next when's the next shot, goal. Like there you could sense the tension on there. And it wasn't that, again, it wasn't for lack of effort. It was just some of these goaltenders were in over their heads. So it was tough. But like I said, you just got to keep moving on and got through it. And I think, it's the old saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's a good example of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that deflation feeling a team gets, you see that at the NHL, AHL, I mean, every level of hockey, I think, even down to like the little guys. I think you feel that.
Yeah. So, for sure. We had definitely 3 or 4 games in a row where first shot on net went in.
Oh, just awful.
It was, you name it. What could have went wrong.
Well, us Boston Bruins fans had plenty of that last year ourselves, so we do feel the pain for sure. Last question about the past before we get into the future, but of course you were a Buffalo Sabres draftee back in 1992, 10th round. Congratulations. They don't have 10 rounds anymore, but successful career though for yourself between the AHL and the ECHL. You referenced it earlier, how hard it is to get to the NHL, how good those players are. But talk about this level, the ECHL. How crazy good are these guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's good players. I think, and I said this at my Hall of Fame induction when I was talking to the players there. When you're in the ECHL, the AHL is your NHL. That's kind of your first step, and that's okay. And but there is another step, and depending on the age and where you are at your career, but there's still guys that can make it to. I think overall the game certainly has gotten younger at all levels, but there is still guys that move on from the AHL or the ECHL, playing the AHL, establish themselves there, and then find a spot in the NHL. And then it's just a matter whether or not they can stick there. I've certainly had a lot of players that I've coached in the American League that played games, or we sent down their rookie year, that went on to play in the NHL. Now, again, the longevity of that, because of how, kind of like the first question, or the question about the life in the NHL, how seriously those guys take their job, and how every day of the year, pretty much, they're putting everything into making sure they're keeping that job. It's tough for a young guy to come up that isn't a high draft pick or has got a little bit of a room to grow. I think the strong affiliations now are different than when I played, and maybe even when I coached the first go around in the late 2009, I think 6 to 9, whatever it was. I think there's still an avenue. It's just, I do think the player has to accept the development part of it, because I know from dealing with guys in the American League, they don't want to go down to the East Coast League. Whereas before, certainly when I played, it wasn't like a black mark on your resume by any means. You were like, I want to play. I don't want to sit on that. But it's a tougher conversation with kids, especially if they're on entry level deals. And sometimes some organizations don't even want to do that, which I don't understand that part. But I said this in the interview process, and I said this to many people. There's not one guy that sat in my office and I said, you're going to go down playing the East Coast League. They were certainly disappointed. Everyone that came back said, I'm a better player for it. And they look like a better player for it, because you're going down, you're playing in more situations. You're given way more ice. To me, that's way better than playing one game over the weekend and skating with the assistant coaches, just to say, hey, I didn't get sent down to the East Coast League.
Right. No, that's fair for sure. And I guess I'll skip to that question next, talking about player development. Of course, we know that minor league sports are are so geared to creating organizational depth and player development. But how do you balance that player development piece with winning? Are either more important than the other when you're talking ECHL level?
I think this is one of the intriguing things, kind of based on what we talked about in Bridgeport, not having a lot of say or control over what your team looks like. This, I have direct control, and that's obviously some of the rules in the contract status in the ECHL make it a lot easier to make changes. But you're also dealing with different things like guys taking off to Europe, and you don't see that in the American League, at least not very often. So I still think, for me, development has always been a priority. I've probably had to, certainly a fair amount of years, had to sacrifice winning for development, and that was understood. It was understood by the higher ups above me, that, I had some thin teams in Albany, but as long as the guys that were getting called up were ready to play, everybody was happy. And that was it. And again, I think that varies from organization to organization, certainly in the NHL, because I was with New Jersey when they were still trying to win cups every year. And so there wasn't a lot of money spent on veterans. There was some prospects, but certainly I did not have many first round or even second round picks a lot over those years. A couple second, a couple third. Adam Henrique, Adam Larson was with me for a bit. Matthias Tedenby, Jacob Josephson. So I had a few throughout, but a little bit of that in Long Island too, with Horvath's getting traded for a first round pick. So the priority was just on developing, and you knew that you had to sacrifice winning a bit. And sometimes that's tough as a coach, but you believe in, it's an organizational philosophy. And if the Islanders and the Devils are doing well, then we're in good shape. I think the situation I'm in here, you can do both. I think I have enough background in development, and I think having a good relationship with Providence and Boston, and hopefully with myself being here, they might be more apt or more comfortable sending down some guys, knowing that I've had a history in the American League, and then being able to surround some of those young guys and prospect potential Boston, Providence prospects with some good, solid ECHL guys, or what we call tweeners, guys that are maybe going to get called up. And obviously, like same as the American League, your roster is always moving and always changing. But the plan right now is to certainly build a team with enough depth here that we can survive some of those injuries and call-ups and continue to put wins on the board.
Awesome. So what style of head coach is the team getting in Rick Kowalsky?
I think, I go back to John Hynes. I'm going to bring passion. I don't want to say intensity, but it can get there to the rink every day. I'm a communicator. I'm a teacher. I believe that accountability is important. You got to earn your ice, and it's not all about, again, your contract status or where you should be in the lineup. And I enjoy motivating people, and I think that makes it fun to come to the rink. That's always been something that, I always we kind of joke about the fact that, the money some of these guys make, and it's gone up at all levels. They should be excited about coming to the rink, but I still think, as a coach, you can motivate them when maybe things aren't going their way, or as an individual or as a team, or sometimes it's just something to shock the system and get them back on track. But I'm a guy that likes to communicate with my players, and certainly I would say a player's coach, but there's also a level of, there's a certain way we're going to do things, and there's going to be a level of expectation, and that's going to need to be met, or, you know, I don't want to say there's going to be consequences, but there's going to be discussions about it.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think the fans are going to love hearing that you are kind of an energy type of guy. I think that's going to play very well here in Portland for sure. Of course, as you know, you're jumping right into the frying pan here in the summertime. We are in roster construction season. What are your hopes and expectations for what this roster will look like come October 18th? That's actually 2 months from today.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This has been a bit of a process because not seeing much of the league and knowing, you know, hockey's hockey, but you got to get a feel for the players first and foremost that I know we have and are returning, and I've started that process of just through talking to Zach and some people in the organization, just getting opinions on the player, what they bring to the table, where they may need to grow. And then obviously, you know, not disclosing it now, but knowing what might be coming from Providence. And that doesn't show up on the transaction sheets right now, but that's something that we have an idea of. And then going after free agents, which I've been very busy on the phone with that. There is some holes we need to fill. Certainly a right shot defenseman. Also looking for maybe another skilled power play puck mover. And then right now talking to a couple centermen that might fit the mold we're looking for. So just starting to piece that together, while also understanding that there's still a lot of players out there. I mean, when I first kind of came into this, I was in panic mode because it was August, and I'm like, there's a lot of holes in my roster right now. But after getting the job, had a lot of players, former teammates of mine that know a kid, or calls from junior or college coaches on behalf of some kids, and that's been rewarding because they're coming to you. And I'll be honest with you, it's been impressive how many people have called and said, I want to play in Maine.
That's awesome.
There's been a lot of that. And it may be a Boston connection. There is some Maine kids out there. I know the Maritime kids in Canada like playing in that area. And then there's a couple names that just popped up that went over to Europe, former players that want to come back. So knowing that I, have that base of from an organizational standpoint where guys certainly enjoyed playing here, and I think a big part of that was the fans. I talked to Wyllum Deveaux he called me right away. Great kid, obviously a good leader. And he said, when we all kind of sat down at the end of the year, it was a tough year, didn't end up where they wanted to be. But I think he said the last game against Adirondack, both teams out of the playoffs and the place is packed. And I was like, wow. And then I just heard the other day, I think they had 9 sellouts last year. Like that's
something like that.
That's very, for me, that I just get excited hearing about that. And like I said, I played in front of that fan base many years ago, and it's a great building when they're into the game, for sure.
Well, I love what you said about people approaching you about players. That just tells me that your relationships, throughout hockey are probably going to really pay dividends as you build this roster. And yeah, to your point, the Cross, it's an old barn, but you pack it out with 6,000 people. It's a fun place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I got a lot of great memories in that building.
That you just referenced Wyllum Deveaux, that you've spoken to him. How have those other conversations gone with him so far as the team captain?
It's good. I've been so busy with a lot of other stuff. We've exchanged some texts. He's had some players reach out to him about wanting either to come back to Maine or play in Maine. I think at this level, you're going to get agents that are going to shop some guys around. But I think I'm not quite at that point because I'm just coming into this now. But I think your players can be your biggest resource, right? Wherever they came from, they skate with buddies in the summer. And if they're vested in what we're trying to do, and he clearly is, they can direct players our way, or they're our biggest, sales guys because they can sell what we're doing here. And I think that will continue to grow through this year. But those guys like that are that value the organization, the city, and can kind of really put in a good word and maybe be a tiebreaker between, a guy coming to Maine or going to somewhere else. They're certainly very valuable to the organization as a whole.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's going to be so exciting to see what the team looks like when we get to October 18th. Now, you referenced it just a moment ago about the relationships with Providence and Boston. That's something that Dexter Payne has talked about on this show a couple of times, wanting to improve those relationships. I know it's early. I think you've kind of already answered this question about expectations of what you might get from Providence. So you already have some sort of an idea. I know you can't share it, but could you share any level of excitement maybe about what might be coming from Providence?
Yeah, I think, and this is something Dexter brought up in the interview process, is strengthening or building that relationship a little bit. And he knows I'm close with Ryan Mujanel. Actually played with him in Norfolk way back in the day, and we coached against each other in the East Coast League and the American League quite a bit. And are good friends. And then Trent Whitfield, like I mentioned, who I played a bit with there in Portland, he's the assistant coach. And then through this process and also the process with Providence have got to know Evan Gold. And I think Dexter just likes the fact that I don't know what the right way to put this is, but it's kind of a level playing field, I guess, because of where I've coached and my experience in having conversations with them. And I think they feel mutually the same way. I'm not gonna give them an answer or maybe sugarcoat something because I'm worried about, the affiliation, and I think they're gonna value that opinion. And that's not to say take anything away from Terrence or who's been here before, but when you're at a lower level and haven't been at that level, you're gonna try and do everything you can to be impressionable, and I don't have to worry about that. And I'm have leaned on them a little more, if that's the right word, for some help on some players, and certainly going to use them as a resource, as a scouting resource, which I don't have as much access. And I've already talked to Evan about that. He's been great. He goes, yeah, we can look guys up and see what our guys have on them. So that's been off to a good start. And there's certainly, we're depending. It's so hard to say right now because things can still play out. And then obviously you need camp in Boston. You have the prospect tourney. There's some guys in there that could be question marks on where they end up. And then, waivers, all that stuff. So there's a lot of time between now and then and a lot of camps before we see the final product in Maine. But I think that they are certainly going to help us out and more than willing to, if we need help in areas, potentially help us find players or be comfortable sending guys to us.
Awesome. That's great. You probably have some idea that, the Mariners have a recent history of being kind of slow out of the gate in October. In your mind, what are the key points for a strong start to the season come October, November?
Well, I think the big one is just your training camp, which I plan on mine being very competitive and setting again, I go back to, I want to set a standard of pace, execution, compete in practice that I'm going to say maybe some of these guys haven't seen. And I think if you have a hard training camp, you can potentially get a good jump on the rest of the league. And if you do get off to a good start and give yourself, I've been on both sides of it, had really good starts, and you give yourself a little bit of breathing room. And then if you don't start well, you can feel the pressure kind of building down that stretch. And you certainly, even if you're playing well, you don't want to take your foot off the gas. But you know, the NHL, the American League, and the ECHL, those rosters are probably never going to be any fuller, healthier, or better than those first 2 to 4 weeks, right? That first month, then stuff starts happening. So if you can get a good start and like I said, give yourself maybe a little bit of a cushion when you do go through some of those scenarios. I think it's a key, and it's certainly something we're going to talk about and focus on, but I do believe it starts with the mindset right from day one in camp.
Nice. And that's not all that far away as we sit here in mid-August. Of course, you're coming back to Portland after many seasons. What excites you most about living in Maine once again?
We just really enjoyed our time there. I mean, it was kind of, I don't want to say the perfect storm for us, but I had played in the American League as a rookie in '93, and then kind of got pushed out with the first lockout in '94. Ended up in the East Coast League, playing for John Brophy down there in Norfolk, Virginia, and had a really good first year. So it'd be my second year pro. Made the All-Star game, had a career high in goals. I think it's 29 or 30 goals. Enjoyed my time down there. Got a recall back to Cornwall where I had played. And then they had a strong relationship with Portland, who was Barry Trotz at the time, and the affiliation with Washington. And the next year I ended up signing with them. And I got, I think I broke my arm that year. Might not have got a recall. It was the following year. I forget. There's 1 year there where I missed. Anyways, that was my first experience. Came to training camp, signed a 2-way American League deal with Portland, and came to training camp. Got the first time being in the city. Played an exhibition game up in Lewiston. That old rink. It was
Kowalsky, yeah.
There's been some upgrades since then, but I know it's still old because I was there when I was in the last year in the American League. When I was coaching up there, they were still playing. Anyways, got to meet Barry and Paul Gardner and kind of learn about how they did things, and was very impressed. And I think I was up and down, myself and Ryan Mulhern were up and down, I want to say 12 times. I felt like we were on a plane every weekend. Oh, it's crazy. But it's so funny. Every time we went up, we played, and we played a lot. And we might only come up for a weekend. Sometimes we were starting to think it might have been a money thing, because we get called up for the weekend, sent down on Monday, and then called back up Thursday. It didn't happen a lot, but there was a couple stretches where that happened. We're like, are they just saving money for 3 days? But that was very, like, if you were coming up, he was going to play you, and he didn't have. I learned a lot from him that I take into my coaching, and he had no problem if a Richard Zednick or a top prospect wasn't playing well, and Rick Kowalsky or Ryan Mulhern, I just use those guys because we were all right wingers. He'd play us. And I remember I told this story on another interview. He pulled me off the bus right before we were going to Springfield, and he came off, and he's like, "Hey, listen, we're going to send you down. We got a guy coming, meeting us from Washington in Springfield." I said, "No, I get it. I know the drill." He stopped me. He goes, "Don't ever say that." He goes, "You deserve to be here. We just don't have room right now. Don't ever accept this." I'll never forget that. We were walking back to the dressing room. The bus was waiting. He goes, don't ever have that attitude that this is how it's going to be. He goes, you deserve to play here. You're good enough to play in this league. And that just, it still sits with me today. So anyways, long story short, next year, sign another two-way, don't get a call up till Christmas. Was having a decent year, but thought maybe now Brian Trotz was the head coach. And didn't think I was going to see a call up, got called up at Christmas, never came back. Learned a lot from Brian. We had a pretty good team. They made some changes, had a pretty good team. Ended up playing down the stretch with Kent Hulse and Andrew Burnett. I think I might ended up being the leading goal scorer in the playoffs, and I was on top of the world. I thought that was my breakthrough year. Was hoping they were talking a NHL deal with Washington. It never came to fruition. Finally signed my American League one-way. Came back, hurt my hip in an exhibition game in Portland, and missed the first 22 games, and the team was affiliated with Chicago, and it was just the timing. I still look back on that. I was right on the cusp. I was 27 years old. Anyways, with that all being said, the coaches, the guys I played with, the fans, the building, the location of the building right down by the old port, the city, the food, the relationship with the fans, the areas we lived. I lived in Old Orchard Beach. I lived in Scarborough, did some ice fishing. We loved it. And it was, so when I say it's kind of a combination of all those things, it was. And it's not like I won a championship there. It's not like I played the majority of my American League career there over 3 years. But it was just, there was just all those things combined, just like I said, I have a lot of fond memories, and I'm really looking forward to getting back there.
I mean, to get that kind of vote of confidence as you're being sent down by someone like Barry Trotz, that kind of pumps me up a little bit here, sitting here in my chair. Like that's just awesome. That's very
good.
And
it just tells you what type of person he is, and I've certainly reconnected with him since the Islander days, and when I joined the Islanders, and just such a down-to-earth human being. Have called him on advice about a few things, and just a great human being well before coaching. And another guy similar to Pete, not over flashy with his hockey talk or his systems. They're simple hockey guys that still realize it is a simple game. And if you got the right people in place and you push the right buttons, you can have success. And Barry is, I wish him all the best. He like I said, that was a long time ago, and I think I told him that story and he laughed, but I don't think some of those guys realize how much they can influence people with what they say.
For sure. I mean, words can go such a long way, and the smallest sentence from one person, can just make a huge kind of life-changing effect at times. And I just like anytime I go to the Cross, we get to look up into the rafters and see that Calder Cup banner, and knowing that Barry had such a huge part of that season it is just awesome. Well, we do have a few listener questions, so we'll dive into these and then we'll wrap this up.
All right.
First, from Chris Roy, have you noticed a vast difference in the ECHL since your time in the league?
It's a good question. I think so. I think it's like any other league. There's a lot more teams now. The quality of some of the newer buildings. I mean, when I played in Trenton, I had 2 stints there, but it was a newer building at the time, and obviously they're still finding buildings and renovating buildings and stuff like that. But as far as the play, I'll be honest with you, that the only thing I'll say is some of the games I've watched, and I'm going to get into more of that in the next month here once I get settled, and getting better understanding of the level of play. I think the size, where most leagues have maybe gotten smaller, I think the size of guys, there's some big boys in this league. In some of the games I've watched, I think that's an area. And then again, I think the pace, obviously, certainly from when I played, I think with the rule changes, all that stuff has certainly come up. And it was probably a little more slap shot style. And again, I played for John Brophy, so we had a 2-goal rule. If we were up by 2 or down by 2, we were getting our pound of flesh either way. So, yeah.
Love it.
But I had a few guys that I ended up playing with. They were like that. They actually said that was the rule when they played in Scope down there in Norfolk. Like, you didn't want to get up by 2 or down by more than 2, because that meant you guys were really mad, or you were now up and clearly winning the game and going to put on a show for the fans. Nice.
I love it. That's awesome.
So that's certainly changed for the better.
Yeah, I think so. A couple here around kind of playing styles. First, from Victor Morrison, are you hoping to build a team that can play a physical style of hockey?
Yeah, and you know what? I think, to your point, obviously, you look at Florida's success, and I think because of the pace of the game and the rule changes, there's still physical hockey. We know the playoffs, they take it to another level, but it's harder to play, kind of like what I was talking about, that we played in the 90s, because, the rules have changed, and, hitting from behind, and there's a lot of checks I threw that would never be allowed, today. Mm-hmm. But I do think you can be really hard to play against, and physicality is certainly a part of that. But I think the teams that take away time and space and are in your face and initiate contact, whether they have the puck or don't, those are the teams. That's the type of team that I want to build. Does that add a physical element? No question, because if you're playing that way, other teams are going to get frustrated. But I think there's much more to it. I think the term hard to play against is much more important than being physical. There's no question physicality has an element to that, but being hard to play against by how hard you work with and without the puck, how you take away time and space, how you work as a team to transition to defense when you lose the puck, getting back above guys, tight gaps, all that stuff. And with that comes, I instead of physicality, say confrontations. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, kind of roundabout way, yeah, we intend on being physical, but the more important message coming out from the coaching staff is going to be hard to play against.
Yeah, it seems, of course, when we go back throughout the decades of Boston Bruins hockey, I mean, that's kind of what they were always known for, is that hard to play against type of team. And looking at how they're building their roster this year, adding a guy like Tenicheneau, let's say, yeah, they're looking to probably do some of that. Do you feel like it's kind of a top-down approach, Boston, Providence, Maine, going to try to play more a similar style?
Yeah, and I do think you need to have those guys that are, every time they're on the ice, everybody's aware of it, whether it's on a forecheck or physicality or toughness. There's no question. I think you have to have that. But, go back to my point, it's a player that I used film of for years, even going back to East Coast League. Like, Bergeron was not a physical player, but he got in a lot of people's way, and he was hard to play against. His angling, his stick detail, he finished checks, no question, but he wasn't running around and hurting anybody. And he's a real good example of a player that just plays the right way, and his compete level and his willingness to go to hard areas and his staying on pucks and stick lifts and stripping pucks. Like he's a great example that I've used, especially for centermen that, you know, maybe aren't big or maybe not the fastest, how well he can check. And, you know, was one of the best in the game at it. So
I miss him so much. And anytime you see him on TV, it's like, man, you still look like you can play, buddy. Get back out there. Throw the skates on, man. We need you. Like, give me a break.
Yeah,
I'm clearly not over it. But, you know, Mike Nicholas, I'm going to skip your question because it's very much like what we just talked about here from Victor's question about just being hard to play against and kind of playing style. So we'll move on to a question from Slew 1974. Jack Hughes is one of my favorite players. You were in New Jersey when the team drafted him. What do the Devils need to do to keep him healthy and on the ice?
If I knew that answer, I might not be on this podcast.
True.
You know what? I think a little bit of that is on Jack. Jack's a competitive kid. He can't. I'll be honest. The first year we had him, and I'm sure there's people that are going to curse me for saying this. I really felt he probably could have used a year of college or junior hockey, but he was first overall. You know, Mr. America, all that stuff. Skill level already at an NHL level, but just physically not there. And the thing with Jack is he's an elite player. He knows the situations that he can put himself in and not put himself in, and he's skilled enough and quick enough to get in and out. But it's the NHL, and as you've seen, it doesn't take a lot for him to get injured. And again, it's just he just physically needs to mature more. And it's unfortunate because I love the kid. You know, you talk about, you know, the NHL level as far as execution and compete, and like this guy just can't get enough ice. And he wants to win every small area game. He wants to score every time. You know, he doesn't take a shift or a practice off, and just he's a rink rat. He just loves the game. But I do think, and I'm sure the coaches have talked to him about playing a little bit more give and go hockey. And there's going to be times where, I mean, if I'm coaching him, you may be showing him the odd clip where he takes the puck wide or there's a 50-50 puck, and it's like, instead of maybe getting in there and getting hit, jump on the other side of him, maybe stick lift a little bit. I don't know that I've seen. I still try to follow them quite a bit because I know, you know, still have a fair amount of people that I know are close within the organization. But I don't think he's getting run at a lot of times. But I mean, if you're a defenseman playing against him and he comes through and happens to have his head down or gets caught in the train tracks, are you not hitting him, right? And the problem is, like I said, physically, he's not there, and I'm sure it's something that they're addressing. But it's unfortunate to see him be hurt as much as he has. So I don't think I really answered your question, other than you know, maybe getting him to play in open ice more, give it up, get it back, and get him to, which he will figure out, identify there's certain situations where it's not worth going in, and maybe kind of go around the pile instead of through it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you know, a 50-50 play on a Tuesday night in January in Calgary, let's just try to, you know, lift the stick right, you know, exactly, like just live to fight another day. I mean, you love the compete level of the kid, but man, the team is so different with and without him. And you know, they were my Eastern Conference pick last year, so I'm a little salty about it, but he's just such a special player, and I just fear that he's one of those guys that we're never going to see the full potential.
I hate to say that. I don't. But
fingers crossed, right? That we do.
He certainly has trended that way, and some of to be honest with you, some of the hits have not been, you know, terrible. He had the one shoulder wrist thing, kind of got tied up, But again, I think it's on their sports science group and Jack to realize, the importance of the gym and training and some of that stuff that he probably didn't have to do much of because he was so skilled.
Yeah,
he
could just blow by anybody.
From my time there, physically, he looked like he was 16 years old.
Mm.
When he was playing in the NHL. But heck of a player, heck of a kid. Obviously, comes from a great family and real special.
For sure. Last one here, and another one from Chris Roy. So, Chris, I gave you two this time. How do you plan to divide the time in yourself into being a general manager and being a coach? How hard is it to do both?
Working through that right now. I think it'll start to level off. It's just a little bit of drinking from the fire hose here. I brought up earlier, right away, my immediate reaction was to panic about the roster. Zach Tolkinen's been a great resource for me. There's a lot of paperwork and contracts and working out salaries and tracking down agents' numbers and fielding phone calls. And, we have some future trades that I'm just learning about now. So taking all that in and then realizing I gotta, oversee changes to the locker room. So I think it's just I'm gonna get it plan to come up there later this week for the first time, check out the facilities, get the lay of the land. Probably come back here for another week, get my family settled, my kids off to college, and my youngest son playing junior hockey. And then head there September 1st. I'll probably get up there one other time for a couple days, but September 1st, really kind of dive into all of that. But Zach's done a good job, and obviously Adam Goldberg oversees a lot of stuff there. So, and just learning for me the proper channels of going through everybody. If we want to, make a change in the room, how's that done? And Dexter obviously has been very supportive with all of that. But I think that'll start to, through September, we'll start to calm down. The biggest key for me is continuing to build our roster and address needs and get some looks. We'll certainly have some good looks at these players in prospect at the prospect tournament in Buffalo. I believe it's around the 10th or 11th of September. And then excited about the general manager responsibilities as well. But it's a delicate balance right now, and just being hired this late and still learning who everybody is and what needs to be done is really a daily process. But I'm excited about it. Like I said, I'm really excited to get there and meet everybody for the first time this week, see the facilities, see the city again, and then that'll kind of, I think, really ignite the path to training camp here.
Well, Rick, we are excited to have you. Can't wait. I think we're all just kind of jonesing for hockey right now. As much as our Blue Jays are playing well, I'm ready for some hockey. I want to just thank you so much for doing this, Coach. I know how much you've got on your plate, and really appreciate the time.
Well, my pleasure. And like I said, you guys are a big part of why this team gets so much coverage. And certainly I'm sure the fan base enjoys stuff like this. And so I appreciate your support there. And like I said, really look forward to getting back in that building in front of those fans and winning hockey games.
Love it. Can't wait. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening today. If you're already subscribing to the channel, thank you. If you're new to the channel, thank you. If you haven't done so and want to stay updated on all the upcoming shows, hit that subscribe button down below on your screen. Helps me out a lot. And until next time, everybody, be kind, show love, and God bless.